Hello everyone, my name is Dylan Doming, and for my Management 435 presentation, I'll be talking about global etiquette. So what is global etiquette and what is it defined as? So global etiquette refers to the cultural guidelines for what is appropriate and inappropriate and what is polite and impolite. It gives a cultural structure, integrity, grace, and finesse to which all our countries are uniquely adapted to. Now what this really means is what stands out with each country, what each country prioritizes as what's important and what's not important, what is polite and impolite, because it's different and it varies from each country. Now, before I really get into the presentation, because now there's a developing situation with all of this, especially with the coronavirus or COVID-19, that plays a factor into global etiquette, because this doesn't just deal with business, but it deals with, again, what is polite and impolite, or what is appropriate and inappropriate. You need to have good hygiene, which is the whole problem with this, and why people are going crazy at stores and everything right now, trying to buy Germex, tissue paper, all that kind of stuff to stay healthy. We, as people on this earth, need to practice good cleanliness throughout. Like, this shouldn't be the reason that we start doing this. That shows good etiquette, because if you go meet somebody from another country, or even if you're just going to meet somebody from a different company, and you go shake their hand and their hand's dirty, that doesn't look good. You know, that looks bad. No one's going to want to shake your hand to do that. But you need to present yourself well. You need to shower, you need to smell good, you need to act good, behave well, but you need to have good hygiene. And that's the whole problem with this whole coronavirus thing. It's make sure you're washing your hands. And yes, that's great advice. We should all be doing that in itself. You know, this should not be the reason that we start doing that. There are tips for what you should do to practice good etiquette. For one, it's show respect. Respect is universally understood, which we all know. Like I said, countries prioritize certain things higher than others. You know, some countries think that one thing's way more important than maybe another country. But you should still respect that. You should still understand that. You should still realize that that is both important to both countries. You know, no one's important to another person's culture. It's pretty simple. Show you care. Be proactive by listening and learning. No one really goes into a business presentation or a business meeting and gets working right away, especially if you're meeting them for the first time. Like he says right here, most cultures prefer a relationship to be established before work can even get done. They want to know that they can trust you. They want to kind of feel you out. See, what is it about you that stands out? You know, are you more of introvert, extrovert? What are your beliefs? What are your values? You know, that's what they want to figure out first before they get into anything. So that's so important. It's just be proactive by listening. You know, like, don't just wait for them to finish talking for you to say what you want to say. What you need to do to show good etiquette is listen, bounce off of them. You know, talk to them about what they're talking to you about. That's what's really important. Strike a balance. Again, no two cultures are the same. Establish some common ground. That is so important when it comes to this. Again, I will keep hitting on it. Every country is different. We all prioritize something different. But you should all get into this honeymoon phase, especially when you start, because you need to establish common ground. You need to establish what it is that you and the other country or the other company have in common. What's something that you both experience that is pretty much the same thing? Talk about that first. You know, you don't want to get off to, oh, what we disagree on. That's the last thing you want to get on, which I'll hit on a little later. No appropriate greetings. And again, this goes back to the picture here on the previous slide with the man right on the far left, or the far side over there. There's most likely an Asian man reaching his hand out for a handshake. Another guy's doing a bow. That's not appropriate. You know, you can clearly see that there's already something not well going on there. That doesn't look good. You know, people are going to think that's disrespectful. You're not really understanding their culture very well. So of course that doesn't look good. No greetings. People greet differently. And again, I'm going to hit on some of that later on because I have more specific examples. But no appropriate greetings, okay? And going with that, appropriate language. This needs to have a lot of asterisks by it. Know what language is spoken in those countries that you are going to. If you don't know that, then that's already off the bad start, because now you can't communicate. You know, and it shows that you really didn't pay too much attention to their culture over there or what they speak. Know what language is spoken. If you don't have skills in those languages, if you can't speak that language, get an interpreter. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of problems that come with business is lack of communication. You can speak the same language and still have a lack of communication. So imagine the lack of communication that's going to happen if you don't speak the same language, you don't have someone there to interpret it. Even when you interpret it, still can cause some miscommunication. But know the language. And here's another thing. Do not use jargon that is not known worldwide. I am from South Louisiana, where we speak Cajun French. My family speaks Cajun French. It is most of them, it is their first language. They say things that even people here in Hammond, and it's an hour and a half difference, like a time to get here. Even people here in Hammond do not understand that jargon. So people don't understand that when we live in the same state, in the same region. Imagine if we went try to speak that in another country. Of course they don't know that. So why would we speak that to them? And that goes with any culture and any language that you speak. Just don't do that. It's no one's going to understand besides the people that you grew up with. And then finally, know your geography. Have knowledge on the country you are entering and what is unique about that country. Don't embarrass yourself. You don't want to go to Nepal and say a mountain range, that's not the Himalayas. That's kind of like, well, we're known for the Himalayas, and that's a really broad example. And there are so many different other examples I could have used, but that's just one. Know your geography, know where you're at, know what's important to them out there. I think that's really crucial. So I just talked about what you should do. What you should not do is use rude hand gestures. Like people talk with their hands. I talk with my hands. I'm doing it right now. I'm talking emphatically with my hands. But many hand gestures have completely different meanings in other countries. Don't put up the peace sign, especially if you don't know what that means in other countries. Don't put up like the hang 10 sign. Don't do any of those things, especially if you just don't know what they mean in other countries. You could be offending somebody and have no idea. You could be telling them bye and putting up the peace sign like people do here in America, but you could be flipping them off in another country based on what they believe in. So just stay safe and don't do that. Appearing self-important. And this kind of goes to the picture that we had in the beginning. Right here, this close one. The man in the suit. Now, I don't know if there's any tension going on here, but maybe the man in the suit is coming off too dominant. Maybe the suit is intimidating, especially people in other countries. Know if that is intimidating or not. Know what is the attire you need to be wearing. I think that's so important. It's very underrated too, because you don't want to be coming in maybe too overdressed, too underdressed. You want to have that good balance and mix right there in the middle. So asking personal questions. You can establish a relationship with somebody without asking personal questions, especially leading off the conversation. I don't ever meet somebody for the first time and say, oh, what's your religion? Or what are, tell me about yourself. That's more than just, basic, simple questions. You don't want to come out with those. Eventually, if you're going to build a relationship with somebody, those answers are going to come out eventually. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. The next two are pretty obvious. Avoid religion, avoid politics. Again, every country is different. Every country has different religions. Every country has different politics. They'll have a political standpoint. Unless you are doing business or meeting with somebody talking specifically about religion or politics, I would really stay away from it for a long time, only because of the fact that they all have different beliefs. You don't want to offend somebody before you even get started. I think that's super, super important when it comes to this. And avoid saying no. It is rude in general, in my opinion, to just say no. I hate when I have an idea and my boss or someone like that just says no. I want you to bounce back with something different. Counter it. Say no. You can say no, but say this is what I think you should do with it. Counter it. Don't just say no, because if you say no, I don't know whether the idea was completely bad or you want to adjust something. I don't know if there's one thing that you can fix, with it. But if you counter it, you give me some room to work with, and that goes with any company and any business. Have that. I think that's very good etiquette. So those are tips of what to not do. And then, so again, we're talking about global etiquette here, and there's many types of etiquettes that fall under this. The first one is social, behavior in society. This doesn't just fall under cultural, but it also falls under the age. People expect people at different ages to behave differently, especially in other countries. Meeting, the proper ways to greet somebody. Again, we talked about it with the pictures of the Asian guy and then the other guy on the bow. Know what's appropriate, and we're going to get to that in the next slide. Eating, know how to eat properly. Now, this is something I've learned a lot of, especially in the last year and a half. When you're eating, know if you should use your hands. Know the proper utensils to use, because to you, you might just be eating normal, but to other people, you might be offending them, and disrespecting what they do, especially the time of year, which you should and shouldn't eat at a certain time of year. You know, that all plays into factors. Understand that. And then business. Don't ever cheat customers. Be upfront. And my dad works for an oil field company. You know, he has very good experience. He has 20 years of experience in the oil field. He understands that people in the oil field cheat out of each other. You know, it just happens. But but they're an outlier. You know, they're off the spectrum when it comes to this. What businesses should do is be upfront with their customers. If you're going to say that a product is a certain price, sell it to them for a price. You know, keep it consistent. I think that's the best thing you can do to keep good etiquette. So what I found was I found a website that you could pick whatever country you wanted, and you could pick the different types of etiquettes they have. You know, like, again, according to the last slide. And you can kind of compare them. So that's what I did. You know, I think it's good to compare to see how each country is different, you know, from different parts of the world. So the first thing we have is etiquette across the globe. Meeting and greeting. In Colombia, men shake hands with direct eye contact. Once friendship is developed, women will give a kiss on the cheek. You know, pretty simple. Excuse me. In France, people greet each other with a kiss on both the left and right cheek. First names are reserved for family and close friends only. This one, in my opinion, is the most important one on this page, because first names are reserved for family and close friends only. So if I go into a business meeting for the first time and I call you by your first name, they might not say anything to you, but it's almost like an offensive thing. It's like, well, maybe you should have known that. You know, Mr. whatever is what you probably should call them. You know, don't just call them by their first name. It's rude. And also the kiss each other on the cheek thing. If someone kisses you on the cheek and you're not expecting it, people in France do it all the time. But if you're not expecting it as a person, you might be taken away from it. You know, you're like, I don't know what just happened. This doesn't feel like a business meeting. I don't understand. That's just the way they do it, though. You know, you have to understand that. In China, meetings are formal. Always greet the oldest person in the room first. They greet foreigners with handshakes, but with one another, they look towards the ground. So again, that first picture that I showed, it's very offensive, because once you know each other and you're especially part of the same culture, then yes, it's okay to do that. But if not, you're going to give each other handshakes, you know, just like anybody else. And then in America, it's pretty obvious, you know. Meetings are informal. If there is not a handshake, there are only smiles and nods. Americans also don't say the bye word much. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, we do. But then I thought about it, I was like, we really don't. You know, when we get out of a meeting or something like that, no one says, all right, bye. They say, all right, talk to you later, see you soon. You know, saying bye almost means we're ending this completely. Talk to you soon means we're going to keep this open. You know, I think it's very important to establish those kind of words. You know, allow the customer to think, yeah, and especially if you want to continue doing business with them, don't say bye. You know, bye is almost shutting them off. So don't do that. So that was meeting and greeting. So the second one is gift giving. Colombia, when going to a Colombian's home, bring fruit, a potted plant, or quality chocolates. This is pretty self-explanatory. You know, there's not really too much going on there, something that we're pretty common, you know, pretty used to. But the other two, another three, you know, are a little different. In France, flowers should be given in odd numbers. I'm going to stop right there first. Flowers should be given in odd numbers. Now, normally when you give somebody roses, give them what? A dozen roses. Well, if you give somebody a dozen roses there, that's offensive. You know, don't do that. They want an odd number. I don't know exactly why. You know, it's probably something that's established a long time ago. But don't do that. And also, if you give wine, it should be the highest quality possible. The people in France love their wine. They have wine for breakfast. They have wine for pretty much any meal possible. Well, if you show up and give them a bottle of wine that's cheap, you know, not really great, they're probably not going to use it, which means you're not standing out. So, and they love their wine. So why would you give them something cheap? You know, it's not like they're not used to it. They're used to it. Give them wine that they expect, or not expect. You know, give them that really good, high quality wine, no matter if it's imported from another country or not. In China, the Chinese like food, so a food basket is acceptable, but not flowers because it symbolizes a funeral. This is not just a China thing. This is around the world. You know, a lot of countries around the world also do not like to receive flowers because it is a sign of a funeral, which is very understandable. This is so crucial. This is probably the most important one on this page because of the fact that if you show up to China in a business meeting and you bring the company flowers, you're pretty much out before you even get started with the meeting because of the fact that it symbolizes a funeral. You're almost symbolizing going to your own funeral doing that. It's super important. And like I said, this is not just a China thing, but it goes on for around the world. And then finally, the last one, Americans really don't have a custom when concerning gifts. They're only brought for special occasions, which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, like, you're not just going to go to your grandparents' house and just give them a random gift. You know, normally it's a holiday or a birthday, you know, something like that, you know, something that's special to them. That's when you really give a gift. It's not just all the time. And then finally, you have business meetings. And in Colombia, meetings don't always follow an agenda. Relationship building is crucial. Considered indirect communicators through body language. Sometimes they focus more on nonverbal language. They want to kind of see, they want to feel you out first. Again, they want to build that relationship with you. They want to talk, they want to see how you're presenting yourself. If I come up here in Colombia and I'm talking to them, I want to express my hands. I want to be energetic. I want to be engaging with everybody. But if I come up here and I'm just slumped, you know, I'm not really doing anything, I'm talking slow, or I'm talking monotone, you know, I'm really not showing inflection in my voice, they're going to look at that. They're going to see me not really interacting with them, and they're not going to connect to me as much. But if I go connect to them, they're going to be able to connect to me. And that's what they want. They want to build that relationship before you even get started on business. Okay? They want to be able to laugh with you. They want to be able to have fun with you. That's what's really important, especially countries in Colombia. Now in France, business meetings should be made 2 weeks in advance. Meetings are used to discuss issues, not make decisions. And that's very interesting to me. You know, they don't get together to make a decision. They get together to discuss the issues, which is very important. You know, you want to be able to bounce ideas off of each other, and then the executives can take all these ideas that you bounce off each other and make a decision. But don't try to go into business meetings in France and say, hey, we're making a decision, it should be final by today. You can't expect that, because that's not what's common there. Now in China, meetings should be made a month or two in advance, and in writing, by the way. Send an agenda to Chinese colleagues ahead of time and bring an interpreter. Now this one is a very loaded one, but right off the bat, you know, you don't want to be able to go to China and then call 2 weeks in advance before a meeting and say, hey, can we set this up? They don't want it weeks in advance. They want it months in advance, and that's good for them. They're probably busy with other meetings. They probably have way more work to do than just focus on you. They want to be able to schedule you ahead of time. And then they also, it goes hand in hand with the next part. Send an agenda to Chinese colleagues ahead of time. They want to know that they have all the right resources for the meeting. So they want you to send an agenda of all the talking points. And then from there, they're going to go into research. They're going to bring in experts on the ideas of whatever that the meeting is being talked about. Well, if you give them 2 weeks, they don't have as much time to prepare, you know, and give all the right resources. They don't want to be sitting in the meeting and not know anything. They want to know what's going on. But if you give them to it a month or two in advance and in writing, it's going to be in their head. They're going to know how to prepare for it. They're going to have time to prepare for it, and that's really important. And then in the United States, business is conducted rapidly and work more towards the task at hand, not really building a relationship. Use stats to back up proof. People don't want your personal opinion about something, you know, especially in America. They want stats. They want stats to back it up. You know, anyone can say anything. Anyone can have their own personal experience. But if I go in there and say, hey, according to this study, blank, 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 bam, there's proof. And now you have actual proof to work with instead of just a personal encounter. That's what they want. You know, they want the facts straight up front. You know, building that relationship is not important to a lot of Americans, you know, and that's just how it is. You know, it's completely different from Colombia. It's almost the complete opposite of Colombia. They want to talk with body language. America, it's like, just put up a fact on the board, you know, just put some stats. That's what's really important to them. You need to have good etiquette, especially with hygiene. It's the way people are going to stay safe. It's the way, you know, etiquette is so important, not just to stay safe, but to protect your image as well. Because you're not only representing yourself, but you're almost representing your country when you go into other countries. So thank you.